coming up next on Two Cops, One Donut.
And so I always had this idea that therapy was terrible and it was always going to be awful. And then after Logan and I lost our kids, I saw someone and she was amazing. She kind of inspired me to want to help other people as well. And that's kind of how I ended up down this road, because I wanted to create an environment where kids and families and law enforcement, and I see all sides. I mean, I'm a private practice, so I see not non-first responders as well. But I wanted to create an environment that everyone wanted to be there. I had worked in managed care when I was in grad school, and I saw those kids who, are living in shelters and they're mandated to go to their court ordered in therapy. And you're right, it's hard to get them to really want the buy-in and really want help. But my first responder kids and my little guys and my teenagers, I have worked them throughout some of their hardest things that they've ever transitioned. And my cops kids are the best. They come to me, and it's great just being able to help them with their child issues and then still see them. I've been seeing a few of them for a few years.
All right, welcome back. Two Cops, One Donut. I am your host, Eric Levine, and today we are going to get right into mental health, first responders, military, and go down that rabbit hole. It is a highly, highly requested topic for the podcast. I've hit all around it on different topics, whether it's an officer-involved shooting. I had Wymie, a Navy SEAL. He was his character was portrayed in Act of Valor, the movie. We touched on it with him. We've had Dr. Benson, who's associated with Mental Health for Heroes, on the show. We talked about it then. It's a topic we can't hit enough, so I brought on Kory Knowles, Logan, and Cathi. Logan, what's your last name, brother?
Long.
Logan Long, and Cathi Long, married. Okay, I should have put the two and two together there. So, brought these guys on. They are running this nonprofit called Mental Health for Heroes, and we are also going to talk about their service and the typical things that go on with the show. So, with that said, how is everybody doing?
Great.
Feeling great.
Okay, so this is for my listeners. This is my first time doing multiple guests on my remote platform. So we're going to see how well this works out, that we don't cut each other off and make it chaotic. And we'll see how this works. I think it'll be all right. But first and foremost, let's go with Logan and Cathi, my married couple. Logan, Cathi, where are y'all from? What's your background? Were you guys law enforcement, military, anything like that? Nurses, teachers, however that goes. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'll let Cathi go first. Ladies first.
Ladies first.
All right. Well, I'm Cathi Long. I spent 10 years in the Navy. I served for Operation Enduring Freedom after 9/11. I was recalled to Guam, so I spent a year and a half over there. After I got out of the military, I stayed in the reserves and I became a police officer. I spent 17 years as a Clearwater police officer, and then decided that my next journey was going to be a therapist. I wanted to help our first responders. And I was an SRO for a few years, and I realized that there was a huge need for mental health in law enforcement, mental health in our community. So I went back to grad school with the support of Logan and got my degree. During COVID in 2019, I opened my practice, which is 360 Counseling here in Clearwater, Florida. And I started seeing clients, and I've grown a group practice. We have 8 therapists now, and we serve our community. And I decided that we needed to help law enforcement. So with Logan's help, we started a nonprofit a couple years ago, and then we kind of had to separate from them, and start off our own foundation, which is how we came to Mental Health for Heroes. And in my practice, I'm able to see law enforcement, their families, their spouses. I have kids that come in. I have their marriages. So we're saving lives, and we're really trying to help our local community and try to expand this process and program into other communities, and kind of getting the word out that it's okay to be okay, not to be okay. It's okay to want to see someone. It's okay to talk about what's going on out there. And we lived it. Logan was in a shooting. We actually met the first day of work. So he was in law enforcement for 18 years. I was for 17. And now our passion is to help other first responders.
Where did you grow up? Did you have servicemen, law enforcement, anything like that in your family?
My entire family is military. My dad did 32 years. My grandfather was a commander. My sister, my brother-in-law, my nephew, my husband. So
Oh man, what is Thanksgiving like for y'all since Thanksgiving just passed by?
it gets pretty crazy, especially because
Is
most
it?
of us were in the Navy, and this is the oddball Army guy. So
Oh, well, the way I tell people is like some people can't score quite as high in that ASVAB test, so it's the Army and the Marines for them, and then the Air Force and the Navy for us.
absolutely.
And then you got the really smart people that went into the Coast Guard, so they get to claim that as well.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I always ask that because I've noticed there's two things that draw us into a life of service. It's either family, because like for me, and tell me if you agree, it was the way, like a family reunion or a get together, anything like that, everybody respected, attracted to our first responder people in our family, military members, firefighters, all nurses, stuff like that. And you saw the respect that they got. It didn't matter if I grew up in Michigan, in Flint, so it didn't matter if you had somebody that was really high up on the chain at GM, which was a lot of people worked for General Motors where I was from. Didn't matter. It didn't matter how much money you made. You could have been a CEO of something. It was the first responders and stuff. It's that reverence that we have for that title, I guess, or that position, what they do, the sacrifice, the selflessness, so to speak. So I like to ask people. I'm going to ask you both, Kory, Logan, the same thing. I'm going to want to know. But that's cool. So in the Navy, what was your job?
Originally, I was a helicopter mechanic for 3 years, and then I switched over to what the Navy calls as a 95-45, which just meant that I did security work. So that's why right after 9/11, 6 days later, I was in my senior year of college out at Cal State, California, and got the call, and that's how I ended up in Guam for a year and a half.
Okay. Did you like it out there?
I didn't hate it. It's a great island, honestly.
Yeah.
So I did some traveling. I did not like the heat, and standing gate guard and just doing police stuff was kind of a lot, you know. But
My sister-in-law, I guess, or soon-to-be sister-in-law, she's a travel nurse, and she went to Guam for 3 months with my stepbrother, and they loved it. They said it was nice.
it is. I
So
did a lot of golfing and a lot of scuba diving, but
they said the same thing, and they're not even golfers.
but
So
that's all there is to do there. So
yeah, I found that interesting. He's big into jiu-jitsu, so I was telling him, like, dude, you got to find places to roll while you're out there. Yeah, I love rolling, man.
that's Logan. He's a brown belt.
Yeah. Nice. I am a lifelong purple belt because I can't stay consistent. I've been rolling since 06. So I think I could have been a black belt probably 10 years ago if I just stuck with it. But you know how it is with this life.
Yeah,
It's
for
hard
sure.
to stay consistent. All right. Logan, sir, where are you from? And kind of go down that same path for us.
So I'm right here from Clearwater. I was born in Morton Plant down the street. Was raised here, went to school here. After high school, I went off to college and hated it. So I decided to join the National Guard to try to do, one, help pay for college, and two, have something a little bit more interesting to do. Then, of course, 9/11 happened. I got deployed to Fort Stewart, Georgia, which I thought we'd be holding up gate guard there. And they ended up attaching us to 5th Group SF out of Fort Campbell. And then we went over to Iraq with them. I ended up coming home early due to a family emergency over there. And then when I got back, I ended up going to the police academy. That's where I met Cathi. Worked there for just about 18 years. I ended up leaving a little bit early. One, because of her support, but two, it was really the mental health thing. Like she had said, I'd been in a shooting back in 2015. The chief at the time, when they were giving me my combat cross, said that the guy wasn't a criminal. He was just mentally ill. So you can imagine how that made me feel. Like, well, I guess it makes me the criminal then. But then even beyond that, in 2019, I had an incident because I was the team leader of the High Angle Rescue Team of having to jump off the Memorial Causeway Bridge, which goes out to Clearwater Beach, tied off to the front of our Chevy Tahoe, me and one other guy, to save some suicidal idiot that didn't want to live. And so that one really shook me, and I had a hard time sleeping after that because I'm afraid of heights to begin with. So how I ended up on that team, I have no idea. But it was just one of those incidents that just kind of messes with you because you go back to work the next day and everyone treats you like everything's normal. They inter-officed me in a war. The chief didn't even come shake my hand. Not that I give a crap about that stuff, but it's just kind of like the sentiment,
Yeah.
of them not
Yeah.
giving a shit about the fact that you just risk your life for something.
Well, you got enough to worry about as going through those incidents. You got to
Sure.
worry about, is the political climate going to go against something I know is a good shoot? Is subconsciously, like I consider myself the same way as you. Is like, I'm not in it for my chief to come up and kiss my ass and get a good photo op for his officer doing a job well done. It's a subconscious. I just need to know that my chain is supporting what I'm doing. So they're going to, if there is a fight to be had, they're going to step up and go to bat for me. That's the type of department we want to work for. So, yeah, I hear what you're saying. I know what you mean. We don't do it to make our chiefs look good or anything like that, but it does help tremendously for our mental health, because it's not just your shooting. It's not just you jumping off. It's the daily traumas. It's the accumulative stuff that we try to bring awareness to. That's my big mission, is the accumulative stuff. Most people see a trauma. What I think the average number is like 5 to 6, maybe 8 in a lifetime, where officers see several a day.
Sure.
So that accumulative stuff, I think there's a lot of research going into that, and I think it's good that we keep hammering on that specific term, accumulative. I like using that, but I'm sorry to interrupt. Keep going.
No, you're good. You're good. But yeah, I mean, that's to my previous point. I just made a decision internally to put in my resignation and retire early. Watching her run her business and seeing how successful it was, and being able to break away from law enforcement kind of inspired me to do the same. Cathi and I had lost our 3 children a decade prior, so we struggled with that as police officers, as family. Chain of command issues there, trying to go to stress management, then saying that we couldn't go because they thought we just wanted to screw around together for a week, and not recognizing the stuff that we had gone through. Then her dad had passed away from cancer that same year, along with my grandmother. So it was just one of those things where, and we ended up getting through that, surprisingly, just being a support system for each other. So then when she left the department, I kind of felt like I lost my buddy. And I started recognizing the same things internally in myself, that I was spiraling, like kind of just not giving a shit, and so when I put my resignation in, the chief, the majors, nobody came up to me and was like, "Hey, what's going on?" And I was running the intelligence unit and building our real-time crime center, which is how I met Brian Barnett, vetted. And so they didn't even seem surprised by it. It was that old adage of, the day after you're gone, they replace you with somebody else and forget about you. And it was so true, because I just thought I was way more important than that. And then when I talked to the chief, my exit interview, he goes, "Well, what's going on? Why are you leaving?" I'm like, "Well, that's a question about 2 weeks too late." And I just told him that, I was spiraling, I wasn't doing well, and I didn't want to be a statistic of suicide. And he looked at me and he goes, "Well, why didn't you come to me and say something?" And I said, 6 months ago, you asked me if I was okay in your office, and I said, "No, I'm not doing well." And it went one ear out the other, and then he gave me more work to do. So, and I made it a point the whole last year I was at the department after Cathi left, to tell people I wasn't doing okay, to see who was going to say something, who was going to come to me, and just kind of like testing the whole thing, because they were doing this whole training in our department about helping people out and recognizing signs of mental health and problems and things like that. So I kind of tested it, and no one gave a shit. it was
so
kind of
they're
sad.
just checking.
And,
they're checking a box basically to say that they did it.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
It's funny you mentioned that, and this is how small this world is. Did you know somebody named Brian Kanicki?
I do. Yep.
That's my brother-in-law.
No shit.
And that's why that's one of the reasons he left.
Yeah, I still chat with him every once in a while on Instagram, because he's doing the realtor stuff now, I think.
Yeah, he's a realtor now.
So, yeah, him and I had several conversations. How you walk down the hall and people are like, "Hey, how you doing?" And you could say, "Not good," and they'll just keep walking. So it's just, and it's nobody's fault. Everybody gets wrapped up in that stigma and that, the shit talking and the busting each other's balls. Same as in the military. It's really hard to go to somebody and say, "Hey, I'm not doing well. I need help." So that's why when we left, with the help of Ryan Barnett, we started that foundation, and it's just been tremendous. The anonymity has been the biggest part of it for, I think, the guys in law enforcement, knowing that they don't have to go to work and be looked at a different way.
Yeah, let's discuss that part, because I think that is a huge. I guess it's the elephant in the room that nobody really ever seems to talk about, is when we do have resources at a law enforcement facility, where is it usually located? It's internal. It's internal help. And me personally, I work for a large department. It's one of the 12 biggest departments in the nation. And there's no way I'm going to go to the internal services because I know how the rumor mills go. And I just don't trust that system. Whether it could have all the greatest intentions in the world, and it's no knock on the people that work in it, I just don't trust that. And if I'm already at a shaky mental state, how am I supposed to go to something that I don't inherently have a little bit of trust for? You know, where you get a outside third party, they they've got that objectiveness and they've got no obligation to that department.
Yeah, hundred
So
percent.
I think it's important to have some outside resource dedicated to that mental health versus internally, because I've witnessed the breakdown of that. I don't even want to try to say the word, but I'm going to try. Anonymity. No, I didn't say it right already. You said it right. I can't say the word.
Now I won't be
Anonymous.
able to.
Being anonymous. I could say anonymous. So I get that. But before we go down that too far, Kory's been sitting over there patiently. Um, Kory, sir, where you from? What's your life of service? I see some stuff in the background there that looks really cool. And if I'm not mistaken, it looks like I see a jiu-jitsu picture up there. Is that what that is?
No, I've never done
Looks like,
jujitsu. I studied Kung Fu Sansu in California.
is that what that picture is up there? I see geese. It looks like geese from back here. Middle picture,
So,
top row.
middle picture. So we were actually in Colorado doing winter warfare training there. So there's
Oh,
guys in like some snowsuits, and I'm on the far left in
it looks like a
Woodlands
gee from.
camo.
Does it look like a gee to you, Logan?
Yeah,
Can you see
A
that?
little bit. Yeah, I could
yeah,
see where you could see that. Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah. That's
Sorry.
actually we were out skiing. So I guess
Okay.
military people like to put pictures up of
Y-
where we were, who we
Oh,
were with. But it's all about the brotherhood. It's just about the camaraderie and lifelong
yep.
friends for me. So, I mean,
Hell
those are
yeah.
my brothers. So I joined the Navy in 1988. I served until 1998. Um, Decided to get out because I was kind of unhappy with politics in our community at the time. Ended up working with a Sandstone Productions doing online TV fitness shows where I was a technical advisor. Then after 9/11, I decided I couldn't sit on the sidelines and came back in. I was at Centcom where I was an IT. I was doing IT work at the time, so I came back in to do IT work. Actually, it was pretty cool because I was a junior sailor enlisted, working with all like captains, commanders, and got to do some pretty cool stuff. Then I got recalled as a Kenrec recruiter, so I was a reserve recruiter for 2 years. Ended up doing fairly well as a recruiter. I was a region rookie of the year and was asked to get involved in another recruiting element that brought me into another civilian career for 17 years, working with special warfare candidates, training them, assessing them, and preparing them for a life in the military. That brought me all the way through December of 2021 when Ryan Barnett called me and he asked me to come work with his company. So that's what I've been doing this last year. So been been blessed
Where'd you
where I
grow
haven't
up?
really jumped around. I was born in Kansas, Wichita, Kansas, but I grew up here in Pinellas County, Florida. That's where I enlisted into the military, and my mom's here. So after I got out, I came back because this is home.
Any military or anything in the family? What kind of inspired you to get in?
But no, that's kind of a rabbit hole if you want to hear it. I was a rebellious teenage child, and I remember one day very specifically. My mom told me you will never be someone special because she was pissed off at me because I didn't want to go to school, and she made me walk home. And I was at Northeast High School. We lived out. I don't know. It took me. So I took the day making it home, and that just resonated in me for years. And I was watching. I was 18 years old. I was watching a show, 48 Hours, and they had a special on Hell Week, and there is literally a plaque in the grinder and SEAL training that says "Be someone special." I was like, I'm gonna be a fucking Navy SEAL. I'm going to show
Hell
her I'm
yeah.
special. And that's why I joined the Navy. That's why I became a SEAL. It was a bit of healthy defiance that I have carried with me my entire life. A defiance against people putting limits on me and deciding what I can and can't do. And I've decided that no one will ever have a say in what I'm capable of. And I will always strive for excellence. And I started that at 18. So every step of my career, distinguished graduate, I was always a leader, always excelling. And I think that was just a pivotal moment in my life where I decided where I'm going to be special. The funny thing is that it doesn't matter who you are or what you do. You're special because of your character and your values, not because of your job title or, that took a little bit of maturity and wisdom to learn. But when I was young, I was hell bent on doing what I decided I was going to do.
Yeah. If you're law enforcement, stop and listen to me right now. If you're a police department that does not have an LPR system, Insight is offering the first 10 agencies, that means one agency apiece, gets one camera for free. You have to tell them that Two Cops, One Donut sent you. You heard me right. If you're a police agency that does not have an LPR system yet, or does have an LPR system, and you're not happy with the product you have, Insight is offering you a free camera, no strings attached, and they will install it. I have 10 to give out. Tell them Two Cops, One Donut sent you, or reach out to me and I will get you in contact. If you're a business owner or an HOA, please stop and listen to me right now. If you're just listening to the audio, do yourself a favor and watch the YouTube version of this episode to get a visual of what I'm about to tell you. I want to tell you guys about Insight LPR. It's a license plate reader. If your agency, community, or business is looking to invest in LPR to help solve and deter crime or to make your community safer, Insight LPR has my vote of confidence. I've met with their team. They know their LPRs, guys. They're the real deal. They bring over 75 years of collective experience to building LPR cameras and the software that supports communities across the country. The other thing I really like about this team is how much they listen to law enforcement. They understand the importance of working together with law enforcement and getting their input as they build and innovate products and their service to match the needs of law enforcement. In other words, when I complain or have suggestions to make their damn camera better, they actually do it. The Insight LPR team is extremely passionate and takes pride in their product development, which makes their cameras some of the most durable cameras in the market. For the gear nerds out there, what that means is this stuff's made of military grade aluminum and is nitrogen purged, whatever that means. This design makes the cameras rugged and able to withstand harsh weather elements. Here's the big selling point for me. Their nighttime scan accuracy is higher than most of the leading competitors. In my opinion, this is what sets them apart. As we know, the majority of crimes occur at night, so it's critical to have high scan accuracy at night. Insight's cameras check the box with the nighttime plate read accuracy greater than 96%. 96%, guys. That's pretty freaking high. If your community is looking to invest in LPR technology, reach out to one of their experts today or reach out to me. Tell them Two Cops, One Donut sent you. Yeah, man. I didn't know you was a Navy SEAL, brother. That's dang it, Logan, Cathi. We're chumps.
No, we've known Kory
No,
for a little while.
I
I'm
was God
like,
gifted. I was God gifted to do what I did. The stars aligned and it worked out. So
yeah.
that was
I
my
always
path.
laugh. Because I'm security forces for the Air Force. I'm actually still in. Don't let the beard fool you. I do my 1 month tour every year.
Nice.
I do all my time at once, but I'm in security forces, and we wear on our sleeves now SF. So Logan, you being an Army guy, you'll appreciate this. I intentionally will my buddies that are Army. I'll be like, yeah, I'm SF, man. And they're like, you're not SF. Quit saying you're SF. You're not SF.
He gets
Like,
annoyed.
yeah. I was like, you don't know the traumas we see out there on the flight line. You know,
I don't even like when people wear grunt style T-shirts because I was in the infantry and I had to earn my cross rifles, so I hate seeing
Yeah.
on people's sleeves. I get that it's a respect thing for the military, but it drives me nuts.
Yeah. My one of my best friends growing up, he graduated a year before me. And basically was right in. I graduated in 01, so 9/11, all that stuff was right when I was graduating. He had graduated the year prior, and he went Army Ranger and then became Airborne Ranger, whatever. I'm not an Army guy, so I don't know all the titles, but that's what he does. He's an E9 now, which you guys know that's hard to get. That's one, it's political, and two, you've had to go through the shit several times to get to that level. So he did, and he's it's one of the people I look up to now, and me just doing my little part-time stuff, weekend warrior, if you will. But the SEAL stuff always interests me because it's such a revered and unknown world. The best thing I have is I watch SEAL Team on Paramount now. It's the only real.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
actually a good show. Yeah, so I made it through SEAL training in June of 1990, and I think there's a totem pole that people put military on, and they tend to put that towards the top, and I think it's a
Oh, that's the
misnomer, and
top.
it's not really a good characteristic of how other people serve. And so I always personally cringe when people are like, "Oh my God, you're a Navy SEAL, and my career doesn't amount to that." No, bullshit. You
Yeah.
served, you stepped up, you answered the call, and just because that's how I chose to serve doesn't mean it's any more special than anybody else's. I've never
Yep.
believed that.
I wish I had known. I wish I had known. I would have loved to try. I don't think I would have made it. I would have liked to try. One, because I don't like water. So I
That'd be
would
a
have
problem.
totally. Yeah, that'd be a big problem. So the whole land, sea, and air thing, I don't think I would have done very well.
But you know how much
Um,
of the things that I liked in SEAL training? Not a whole lot did I
yeah,
enjoy, but I was willing to do whatever it took to be a SEAL.
yeah, yeah, and that's where we probably differ. I'd probably be like, you know what, same for me. Uh, especially if you start trying to partially drown me, that ain't no. And if I have to deal with spiders, water and spiders, I don't deal with either one of those too well. So, I don't want to give up a.
You'd
Let's
love
put
to
it
hear
this
about my
way.
shooting, and the guy was letting tarantulas run loose in his bedroom.
Oh my. Okay, you want to talk tarantula stories? Okay, let me tell you about the time. Let me tell you about the time that I had a domestic call. I show up, and it's a frequent flyer place. Well, they had got a tarantula terrarium or whatever the hell you call it. And it was one of those houses. It was a residential home where you walk in and the living room's right there. But they had this like half wall, like just where you put your shoes as you walk in, this little half wall. Well, that's where the terrarium was sitting. So as soon as you walk in and I'm looking, I'm like, hey guys, what's going on? I'm going through the usual, and I'm like glancing over at this terrarium that had never been there, and I, it's got like sand and stuff in it. So I'm like, oh, that's not a fish tank. It's kind of weird. And I'm looking, and all of a sudden that thing was like, and it just put its little front legs up on the window, and I ran out of that house as my partner's rolling up. I goes, you deal with it. I'm be out here. I was like, if you need me, I'm out here. And he goes inside, and it's just a verbal argument type thing, which it always is at that place. And he's like, what happened? I was like, that fucking spider, dude. I was like, did you see that? He's like, you afraid of spiders? And then ever since then, like in the roll calls and stuff, they'd have fake spiders put out. They'd had the movie Arachnophobia. They put little poster memes up of that and put my face on, Jeff Daniels' picture.
Can't ever let them know your weakness, man.
Oh,
That's a rookie move.
and tornadoes. I forgot to mention tornadoes. I got a lot of fears apparently. Spiders, tornadoes, and water. Because I grew up in Michigan. We have basements everywhere. Even if there are tornadoes there, don't get me wrong, but we have basements. In Texas, in Tornado Alley, nobody has basements. The clay is too hard apparently, and the ground shifts a lot. And nobody has basements. So for me, I don't know what to do. Like they scare the shit out of me. So I'm on patrol one night, and the tornado siren goes off, and dispatch is letting us know, hey, there's a tornado in the area. I'm like, nobody says anything on the radio after that. So I'm like, holy shit, what do I do? And I'm looking at the radar. I'm trying to look on the map, and it's like a mile away from me, which that's too close. So I get on the radio, Sarge, I give my dispatch. I'm like Central 420 or whatever I was. And he's like, Sarge, where do I go? And he's like, and I'm panicked. You can hear it in my voice. I'm like, where do we go? And it's quiet for a second. Sarge, where do I go? And like, they're not answering me on the radio. And he's like, Levine, chill out. Go to the mall, park underneath the parking garage. I was like, okay. I get there, and there's like 15 cruisers already there. And as I'm coming up, they all put their lights on. And then after that, After that, inside the roll call room in my mailbox was the movie Twister stuff. Like it was everywhere for months. So yeah. Anyway, I'm sorry I hijacked that. But okay, so you were inspired in your trigger was kind of my trigger as well. My grandmother. I I was trying to go to college right after high school, and I was kind of blowing it, like doing it half-ass. Like I started out full time, and then I dropped down to kind of like part time, and I was working, and you could just see the signs that I wasn't going to make it. And my grandma, well, we're sitting there, and she's just out of nowhere. She's like, I had such high hopes for your life, and it's just disappointing. And I'm like, oh fuck, like grandma just stabbed me in the heart, and that was my wake up call. I started immediately looking. I had considered the military. I wanted to do it, but I had gotten like a partial scholarship for school, so I was like, I'm gonna do school and then maybe try to be an officer and a police officer, and then it wasn't working. I was blowing all that freedom that I wasn't used to having. So then I jumped in the military. So kind of the same trigger for me. So I get where you're coming from. In that, so you guys, all of you guys have this theme in common: a life of service. Kory, did you have people in your family, or were you the first?
So my grandfather was in the Coast Guard, kind of got rolled into World War II, and that's about it. I mean, I'd heard rumors of like a great uncle that was a frogman that turned out to not be true. The joke is that I've met all 5,000 SEALs in a Friday night in a bar, and there's only like 267 of them. So it,
Out there doing that stolen valor.
oh, yeah. So actually that kind of helped inspire me anyway to think that there was a family connection to someone that had made it, and it's like, well, I was 18 years old when I got there, graduated at 19, so it took every bit of fortitude I could draw out of myself to make that happen.
Yeah, and did you stay a SEAL your entire time? That first
So
first.
the first 10 years, yes, I was at SEAL Team
Yeah.
5, and then I went to BUDS as a first phase instructor, and then got out at that point, and then came back in. I was not in a SEAL capacity. I was in the reserve, and that actually, the way it worked out, me being a recruiter, and then as a SEAL, actually crushed recruiting, and then got the eye of the admiral that had me start a SEAL specific recruiting effort that I ended up running as a civilian for 17 years.
Okay.
Wow.
So
Nice. That's cool. Yeah, there's a lot of prep work for those that I wish I had known about. Like I said, some of the stuff that's out there. You can tell me the statistical odds of this. Two guys I graduated with, and since you might, I don't know if you know them or not. This would have been in the 2001, 2005 era, maybe 2000. Stan Dimich and Mark Allen. They both they graduated high school together and both made SEALs together, which I've never heard of two people going through. I don't know if they made it through their first time together, but I know they graduated together, or they.
yeah, not familiar. Well, yeah, I mean, a lot of people ask me, does he have what it takes? It's like, well, I don't know, but history would say he will not be successful. I mean, if only 15% are getting through every class, odds are not in your favor.
Damn, that's crazy. Dang, you totally fanboyed me out. I love the SEAL stuff. Having Wymie on, that really, I got a high admiration for that stuff, because it's insane. Of the 1% that sign up for the military, you guys are like that 1% of the military. So I think
Yeah,
that's why people look at it in such high regards.
yeah, I mean, I guess, but being that that's what I did, I mean, to me, we're all the same. So I never
Yeah,
had I mean, I was just, these are my brothers, this is my job, this is what I do, and it's normal, average day for me.
yeah. I have we'll go back to the mental health side of things. I have kind of that I don't. It's not necessarily survivor's guilt. It's very mild, but it's one of those things where I signed up during a time of war. I went
Yeah.
Air Force. I thought it was the best fit for me, and I get put in Montana. And that's where I did my time. I was a nuke guy. Like I safeguarded nukes as a cop. And you look at your service and all your friends that you make during boot camp and all, you know, friends, they're all deploying. And I do my 4 years active duty. I go nowhere but Montana because I'm guarding the prairies, you know, deployed 5 days at a time. And it sucks because you look and you're like, I didn't help. I didn't do anything. You look at your service like you didn't do anything for anybody, especially when you sign up because, you know, 9/11 was a big, I don't know the word for it, a big reason for why I signed up. And I just feel like my service wasn't, you know, significant like your service or Logan's and Cathy's service where you guys were out there doing stuff.
Yeah, but what are you judging that on? I mean, your service was immensely significant based on all of the people that could have served that were sitting at home doing nothing.
Right.
So
It's a young man's thought process for me.
yeah,
I don't think that way anymore.
yeah,
I
no, that's
see.
good because that
Yeah,
was actually,
everybody's got a role to play.
here's an example that, I grew up wanting to be my father. And I think a lot of young men do, right? And my dad was a very successful businessman. And I am not my father. I don't have his skill set. I don't have his strengths, but he doesn't have mine. And I have a 20-year-old son. And I was very clear with him. I was like, you will never be me, but I'll also never be you. And there's some things that you will do that will far surpass what I can do. And my goal as your father is to ensure that you have a far better life than I do more, have a more successful, satisfying life than me. And the whole judging thing, I think that creates a mental health issue because you're looking at it from a distorted prism,
Yep.
in my opinion.
Yeah. No, I agree. I agree. All right, guys. Let's I think we've done some good steps at humanizing and kind of getting to feel y'all out a little bit. So let's jump into the mental health stuff. Okay. So Logan, Cathi, you kind of touched on you saw a need and you guys had started kind of creating this thing. So explain to me the pitfalls that you were seeing. Like try to get into some specifics of the pitfalls of where you guys were at that really triggered and like it is very rare for people to leave our line of work, police work, especially later in our years of service. You know, with you having 17 years in and leaving, that is a big statement. So kind of get into that.
Well, for me, I was doing both jobs. I was a detective by day, and then I was a mental health professional at night. And when COVID-19 hit, our daughter had to stay at home from school, and they made me work remote as a detective a quarter mile from my house. And I tried everything. I have to be home with my kid. She has no one. She's in fourth grade. She can't be home alone, and they were happy to let me go home for a week at a time for COVID, but they just would not allow me to work from home or give us any alternate, anything. And since I had the company, I just decided, well, I'm going to put my family first. And it was part of my mental health journey as well that I needed to make sure that my family was taken care of. And it was a hard decision for Logan and I because, I was at 17. We get to retire at 20 in our department. But we just kind of took the leap of faith and thank God we did because I've been able to grow the company and been able to help so many people because of it. But when I did my exit interview with the chief, he asked, well, again, what's going on? And I sat for 30 minutes and just told him all of the pitfalls about mental health and why they had me. I was a licensed professional and they were using other people for the mental health check team. They didn't even utilize a resource that they had. And they never even asked me to. Thank God, because I probably wouldn't have done the business that I did. I would have just given it all to the department like we always do. So I'm glad that they didn't. I'm glad that I left at the time I did. It was the best decision for my family. And Logan was able to leave a year later, and he's not wrong. We got hired together, so we went through all of the pitfalls of the ups and downs with all the different things that we did as law enforcement. And we always were together and always helped each other. At the end of the day, it was both of our plan when we left. It wasn't our plan to leave early, but mentally, we were both better people for it.
Okay. Logan, what about you, man? What were some of the, especially you going through some stuff work related, where were they missing the boat?
So I think, it's one of those things where, and I'm sure you could name, and you might even be one of these people yourself, where if your chain of command comes to you and asks you to do something, you say yes. And you're like, yeah, I want to help out. I want to make the agency better. I want to try new things. Like when I was on the SWAT team, I was the AV guy. I was on the sniper team. Then I ran the sniper team, and then they put me on the high angle rescue team. And then, you're always compiling it. But for me, it was because I'm one of those guys that wants to do everything, at least try everything. That's why I do jujitsu. That's why I fly planes. That's why we do scuba diving. We do, I just want to experience everything. So for me, I was having such an amazing career, and then the second you say, "Hey, I have too much on my plate. I need to clear something off," they get angry with you, or they look at you disappointed, or they can't find somebody else to do it because they didn't set anybody up to take your position. Um, and then after those few incidences, and then her leaving and seeing the mental health stuff becomes such a big deal, and then you add the George Floyd stuff that was happening, the protests, then my chain of command coming to me, asking me, being the intel sergeant, to find out when the next protest is going to be, and looking at all these people, and then I started getting kind of like, why am I looking at regular civilians who aren't committing crimes, aren't about to commit crimes? Like this is kind of unethical from an intelligence gathering standpoint. And so I just started to struggle, and I knew things were going bad when a narcotics sergeant who was on the SWAT team with me, and we were both team leaders, would come to me and like, "Hey, Logan, we got a search warrant. Can you grab one of your snipers and, come help us out on surveillance or whatever, or hitting the door?" And I used to call Cathi and be like, "Cathi, I got a search warrant. Can you take care of Megan and get her from school?" And she's like, "Yeah, babe, I got it." We're always that support structure for each other. And I found myself going, "No, I got to go get my daughter from school. I got to, I got to be home for dinner, or I got something else going on." I started making excuses for not wanting to do those things anymore. And it wasn't necessarily like a fear of getting hurt or getting in a shooting. It was more of just like my brain wasn't there, and it would have been unsafe for me to be distracted during an operation like that. So, and that's when I decided to leave the SWAT team. That's when I decided to leave the professional altogether. I mean, it was a gradual slide. But thank God I had Cathi and the support structure I do at home to, that's all we ever talk about. Go to walks in the dog park and talk about what, the future is going to look like. And I just didn't see a future anymore. I was spiraling. Like I said, I was concerned I was going to become a statistic, and, Cathi was seeing it, and it just, I don't know. Like one day we were just at lunch, and I was like, "No, can't do this anymore." Walked in, filled my paperwork out, and handed it in.
Yeah.
And just had to rip the Band-Aid off. And it was hard. I mean, it was hard to even sign the paper. I was shaking. And I mean, it was just a weird thing.
Now imagine Cathy's not a cop, doesn't understand the life. How much more complex that gets.
Well, and that's
why the military.
That's why we think this foundation is so important, because when I did see a therapist one time after that bridge jumping incident, and I went to Dr. Benson's office, and I did see the anonymity that the department had contracted this outside resource, which was great. And I even went to the guys in my unit and I said, "Hey, I went and checked it out. It's cool. You can do it. Don't even have to tell me you're doing it. Just tell me you're going to lunch or you need to leave early. I won't ever ask," because I wanted my guys to seek help as well. And but the problem is, agency only contracted for their employees. They don't contract for someone's wife, someone's kid. No one ever checked on Cathi after my shooting to see if she was okay, or see if I was doing okay from her perspective. No one checked on the children. Nobody came in, or there was no resources available to check in on the family members, and no follow up from the agency. So that's one of the best things I think about this foundation, is that it provides resources not only for the first responder, but their families and children as well. So
from my perspective, I've been doing law enforcement almost 18 years now. That is one of the biggest components we're missing. We push out a lot to help our first responder, push out a lot to help our military member. We're not doing shit for the family, for their fishbowl, the planets that orbit the perceived problem. We're not doing anything, and you can't address the leaf without addressing the roots. And the roots is Cathi, your kids, maybe your parents, all the people that surround you and are around you daily. Those are the people we have to educate. We have to, because if you start, now, Kat, you guys are a little different. Cathy is police. She understands some of the cycles, and she's mentally health trained. So One of the issues that we'll see is the officer is spiraling. That causes tension in the marriage. Let's just say it's a marriage. We'll go off of that. Um, and now this animosity and stuff starts to build amongst the spouse who has zero training in all of these things that we're taught all the time as cops. I would say annually across the nation, for the most part, we're getting some sort of mental health training, but it's all about dealing with ourselves. It's not training the spouse, training them to understand the mental state that just working midnights does to the body, chemically, physically. Poor nutrition. We're not hitting the gym anymore. We're not all these different factors. They're minor factors, but they matter significantly when it comes to this stuff. So I think it's important in what the Mental Health for Heroes is doing is taking the time to get that training towards the spouses. Now, we've been in a war the last 20-something years, and that finally has wound down, and we've learned a lot about mental health treatment and stuff, and I think the military is doing a really good job at spouse support now. Took a lot of trials and tribulation, but they're from everything I've seen, they're doing really well. So what is it that Mental Health for Heroes is doing specifically for the spouses?
It's probably better for you to answer.
Well, we are able to see the spouses in therapy individually or as a family or as a marriage counseling, which has been super beneficial. Also, when we do marriage therapy, especially, I train my staff into talking like a first responder, like law enforcement. So I talk a lot about, hey, we're taught how to de-escalate on it. I can talk a Baker actor or someone who's, in a heightened state. I can talk them to sit down on a curb, but I go home and I scream and yell at my wife and I drink beer and I don't have healthy coping techniques and I do it like shit. So I teach them, my first responders, how to do it at home, how to take the training that they already have, how to talk, de-escalation, talking in active, passive, or aggressive communication. I break it down for them to where they understand what I'm talking about, and it makes it so much better and so much just they're able to understand it and hear it. And then when their spouses are there, I can talk to them on both levels of being a spouse of a first responder and also being a first responder, which is definitely challenging when you're talking about shift work. And our career over 17 years, there was definitely a lot of hard times, but we also made it work for our benefit. So when I'm talking to these spouses, I'm helping them on all aspects because they become really close with other people that they work with. So there sometimes becomes jealousy, especially when you're talking about different sexes. We've all had work husbands, work wives, all that kind of thing, especially when we're doing a job like that. So I can explain it to them in a way that really calms their fear of their spouse wanting to leave them. That has nothing to do with that. It's just when you're kicking in a door with someone, you really have to have a trust and you really have to have you really have to believe in that person. So I do a lot of that kind of work within the sessions. We also help their kids. Their kids struggle, right? They're struggling with so much because dad's missing all their games and or mom's missing, their dance recital because they're working. I know I missed a ton of stuff with my kiddo when I was working as a school resource officer because I was married to that school for 5 years and he had to take over a lot because that's just what you do when you're in those positions. Like Logan said, as a police officer, I was always, yes, whatever you need, and I missed out on quite a bit. And I should have learned boundaries. I should have learned how to say no. And I teach those first responders, I teach them how to do that in a healthy way that they're not going to be looked negatively with their, the upper staff. Because when we stop setting boundaries, they just compile and like Logan said, there's people that say yes and want to do a good job. They're just going to give you more work to do. And those lazy ones, we know that you retired on duties that just sit under a tree all day. Dispatch won't even bother them because they're too scared of them. They know they're going to be grumpy on the radio and they don't want to deal with it. So we're, I just work all of that aspect into it. Even my firefighters, because we see firefighters, dispatchers, we see Sunstar and law enforcement is who we're seeing right now under the foundation.
And I think it's interesting too. Cathi and I kind of came up with this thing a few years ago when we were at the department that it's like a domestic violence relationship between the officers and the administration because they will just beat you down, and then dangle a carrot in front of you and tell you how much they love you and give you like a little position on a anti-crime team or SRO for her, and then you're in love with your department again, and then they beat you down, and they beat you down, they beat you down, and I think some of that learned behavior goes home with the first responder, and then they're like, oh, I love my agency, I have to do this, otherwise I can't get promoted, and so yeah, you're gonna have to take care of the kid, or you're gonna have to pick up the slack because this is my career. You know, I think I think that was a benefit for her and I being both law enforcement, because we would just come home and be like, yeah, that's bullshit. Like, we're each other's ride or die. Like, I don't care about the
Yeah.
department. But that's a unique relationship between her and I, and it's a rare thing because we've seen other people who have had relationships in law enforcement. It never seems to go well. So I think we're kind of like an exception to the rule. But we've gleaned a lot of insight from that decade and a half or so of service. But it really is, and I told the chief when we left. I think she said the same thing. You know, you treat us like we're in a domestic violence relationship. That's why cops feel like they can never get out. They feel like if they leave, there's nothing else that they can do. And I didn't even have a job when I left. Thank God for Ryan. He just offered me a job, but I was so fed up with it. I was just like, nope, I'm gonna roll out.
Gotcha. So what is it that you do specifically for because I get the two confused. You work for, because we've talked about Ryan Barnett.
Yeah, so I worked for Ryan previously as a sales guy in a business development position. And then I just kind of went to him and told him that I need to find a different path. It's not really for me. So we had discussed, because previously the way this whole Mental Health for Heroes started was there was a previous foundation. I'm not going to get into all the drama with it, but we were essentially doing the exact same thing through that foundation. They decided they didn't think what we were doing was good or right, or they had some problems with it. And even the sheriff came to our aid and said, no, this needs to be done. So we parted ways with them, and then Ryan and I got together. And so basically what I did was I wrote did all the administrative stuff to get it started, the IRS paperwork. We kind of all collaborated on the name and came up with that. But essentially I did all the admin work to get it going and to get the 501c3 status. And then since then I wrote the federal grant that we applied for through SAMHSA. And we just received notification, I think last month, that we got the grant. So now we're in a procurement process for selecting the vendors and the mental health clinicians and whatnot. So that's kind of what I do. I'm more of like in the background. I'm not the face of it. I'm not on the board. They didn't want me on the board because Cathi is a vendor and they thought it was a bit of a conflict
of interest. Yeah.
Yeah.
I could see that. Okay. What about you, Kory? What's your role with Mental Health for Heroes?
That's a good question. I know that I've been recently promoted to Vice President of Operations at Vetted Security Solutions. With my background in the military and as a SEAL, I'm sure that there'll be a place that I can help for if they do decide to work with veterans. So that's a good question. I'm curious what the future holds for my involvement.
Yeah, Ryan, if you listen to this episode, Ryan, I think we should have a military veterans side of that.
So it's funny you said that, because we're actually collecting data on how many of the first responders are also veterans to kind of see.
I would bet it's pretty high.
Oh, I would imagine so.
This episode of the podcast is brought to you by MPAC Tactical. MPAC is a tactical outfitter for the men and women of our military, police, fire departments, and other public safety around the country. MPAC's core beliefs is that fearless men and women protect our freedom and safety should have access to the best tactical performance apparel, equipment, and tools on the market. And they shouldn't have to go broke to get it. I've used MPAC for about 11 years, and I can attest that they do live up to their core values. So you get a personal recommendation from me. You can find them at impacttactical.com. That's MPAK tactical.com. And be sure to tell them that 2 Cops, 1 Donut sent you. Yeah, for sure. But to the point that I was making about the spouses, I found that, you know, that slow slide can turn into an avalanche pretty quick when the home life starts to crumble, because it probably starts at work, but we can get away from that. Can't get away from home, and that's where our outlet is. That's and if that's an unhealthy. I got lucky in my career. Now my wife and I, we've known each other since we're about 5 years old. We've been together since about 7th grade. Dated as much as you could date as a 7th grader, you know, go roller skating together. You know, the summers would come up, we'd break up because we don't see each other, and then school starts back up. Well, you want to be boyfriend girlfriend again? That was our life for a while, and then high school sweethearts throughout. So we grew up together. It was kind of a unique situation, just kind of like you two being first responders together. So my dad actually retired from the department that I work for now. But I grew up in Michigan. He's down here in Texas. So I'd visit during the summers and stuff like that. But other than that, my outlook was police officers don't stay married. Not that my dad was alcoholic, but alcoholism is a big thing. And, I got to see the police world as a kid. And I knew I was going to, that little thing in the back of your mind, I knew I was going to be in law enforcement somehow. I didn't know if it was going to be with a 3-letter agency, through the military, or, a city cop, sheriff, whatever it was going to be, but I would be involved somehow. And in that, being part of law enforcement, I saw the writing on the wall at a young age that divorce is high, suicide wasn't really talked about a lot back then. And I remember hearing about agencies having to try to cover up a suicide. I mean, those were the rumors of cops that were taking their own lives because of insurance and all that stuff. And now more mental health awareness has been out there. I think the insurance companies have finally gotten away from that a little bit. So what I did the opposite of what most cops do. And that was my no training, no nothing. That's just what I did. What's one thing that we do as first responders? We don't tell our significant others about the bad stuff. I tell my wife about the bad stuff immediately. If I have a bad call, tell her, hey, I had a rough one. Do you want to know the details, or you just want me to kind of gloss over it and tell you what happened? And she, for the most part, she's like, no, just tell me what happened. She wants to know the details, but there's sometimes she's, if it involves a kid, she's like, just, you can gloss over. You don't got to tell me the nitty gritty. So I talked about it. So that was one thing that I did that most cops won't do. And I've actually gotten arguments with cops. Why would you burden her with that information? Why would you burden her? Well, it's a marriage. That's kind of the role I think she assumed when we got together is it's not 50-50, it's 100-100. We both put 100% into it, and I got to share that stuff. Otherwise, that entire load's going to be on me. And then where's that load going to go? It's going to go down that typical path of a first responder, whether it's divorce, suicide, whatever it is, abuse. I don't want to do any of that. So I found talking about all that stuff helps a lot. So I did that. I have friends that aren't cops. I try not to hang out with cops. That's another big one for me. I need outside perspective. I can't sit here and tell war stories all day long. Now, don't get me wrong. It's fun. I don't mind doing it occasionally. But I want friends that I can talk about stuff that isn't, I don't want my world surrounded by my career. And I love law enforcement. I don't want to grow to despise it. And that is kind of the thing. And look, here I am doing a podcast about first responders, but it's because I love the career so much. I don't want it to turn sour for people who love to serve. And I love having guys like you on, Kory, Logan, Cathi. You guys, you figured out a way to serve, and you're going to share that message with people. Like, you can serve in different capacities and still have a significant impact on people. So that is kind of some of the stuff that I did without any training, but not a lot of people do that. Optimism. I'm an eternal optimist in a job of cynical assholes. I mean, in the military, and what do we talk about? We talk about how everything sucks. We're the biggest whiners out there. Cops and military, we are the biggest one. The only one that doesn't whine is FD, and that's because they've got the life. They get to play video games and cook for each other all day long. It's amazing. So
yeah, that was my dad. He was a firefighter for 30 years. He'd go visit him at the firehouse, and he's making dinner, sitting in the recliner watching TV.
Yeah. My grandfather was a fire captain up to fire chief, and so I got to be around that life as a kid. And I remember thinking, oh, that's the best. I'm going to be a firefighter, until he took me to a house fire one time. I was like, I'm going to be a cop. I'm not dealing with those flames. That stuff's hot. But what has been your experience, Kory, as far as let's go with the military, because that's your world, seeing the tolls of the job and how we how we the typical coping mechanisms and all that stuff.
Well, I was young, and I think that was a disadvantage. Uh, I I think in the military or even in law enforcement, firefighter, even being a paramedic on the scene of a disastrous accident where a child's hurt, I think I experienced so many different traumatic events that I started realizing I didn't have coping skills for some of these things. And I didn't realize I was afraid of heights till I got into the military. I didn't realize I had a lot of different fears. And I think the fears and the lack of coping skills snowballed over time until I started to learn how to compartmentalize and literally just start shutting off emotion. Where, I mean, I got to where I didn't feel joy, I didn't feel sadness, and I didn't feel fear anymore. And I don't think those were healthy coping skills, but I didn't know what else to do to be able to operate in that environment anymore. And that created havoc in my marriage. I was, seeking ways to go overseas, spent 300 days a year overseas when I was at Team 5, married for 3 of those years. So I think through learning a lot of really bad coping skills and then not having a lot of resources in the 90s to learn, I finally found a mentor that was a really based in just reality. I mean, not necessarily optimism, but just reality. Here's the reality of the situation. How are you going to handle it? Or, are you going to handle it or are you going to avoid it? And slowly started learning to start opening those boxes I'd closed up and dealing with them over time. But I caused a lot of damage in my first marriage and a divorce. Didn't have children yet, thank God. So, yeah, the ability to have skills that you're learning and actually learning to confront and cope with things. I mean, I think it's essential for life and whatever you do. I don't care what profession you're in. I don't think coping skills are taught, in general, unless you have mental health professionals as parents. I just, I mean, I know so many people that are so fucked up all over the spectrum of society because they don't want to cope with life. They're afraid of reality. I mean, they love fantasy worlds, and I mean, I love the idea of working specifically with law enforcement. I think being a police officer is more dangerous than being in the military. In the military, you have a very clear-cut enemy. You have a very clear-cut mission. Law enforcement, you don't know who the enemy is because they're civilians. They're your neighbors. They're just people everywhere. I think that is a very dangerous environment that could cause all kind of problems. And for mental health for heroes to specifically work with them and give them tools to cope with life, I love the idea of that.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think that for a societal push, and I still believe it's the minority, but a societal push for police reform. The defund idea is terrible, been proven to be a stupid idea.
Yeah, it's stupid.
Yeah, but if we're going to push money towards places, this is one of those things we need to push money towards. Take care of your roots. When the root's healthy, everything else blossoms and it's fruitful. So, little Japanese proverbs, Chinese proverbs there, but it's the testament of time. When you take care of your roots, everything else falls into place. So if we start helping our first responders and their family, I think it's important to make that distinction. Like, it can't just be the cops. You have to get their family involved too. And I love the fact that y'all isolate the spouse, or at least offer that they can do together or separate. I think when you talk about coping and learning coping skills, I could tell you right now, 18, 19-year-old me wouldn't have listened to any of this shit. I wouldn't have. And if you would have asked me at 18, 19 years old, I would have told you then I was ready to be a cop. And now 40-year-old me is like, that was a dumbass kid. You shouldn't have gave him a gun until he was at least 25 years old. And even then, I don't think I would have been mentally mature enough to handle this career field. But look what we're doing. We got guys like Kory out there, in the elite of the elite with some of the biggest decision making you can have in special operations. You got us out in the streets being cops dealing with domestic issues when we haven't even lived a life ourselves yet, you know. On top of that, now we got to keep all of these laws, all these civil rights things in our head. The 0 to 5 years is a rough go for any military or police member, because real shit is on the line in that first 0 to 5 years. And what is your brain doing? It's like, okay, I could be the best people person in the world and know how to talk to people, but not when my brain's flooded with all this new information I have to process and still have a genuine conversation with somebody. So it's that learning curve. Some people pick it up faster than the others, but learning that information straight up, like, do I have a right to detain this guy? Okay, I do. I could show up to a call now and it's already processed through my head. Nobody's free to go. Everybody's staying. I'm talking to these people. Like, you know, your brain just starts to process that stuff. And it's the same thing, you know, situational awareness. You guys are out on the special operations and everybody knows their team. Everybody knows where they're going, what they got to do. But how much practice did you have to do before you were ever allowed to go operational?
Years.
I was going to say years. And you got 18, 19-year-old kids learning how to deal with multi-million-dollar equipment, multi-million-dollar operations, political, like sometimes you weren't allowed to leave a footprint. Nobody needed to know you were there, because if they found out, you just created a world war. Who knows? I mean, that's an extreme version, but it's realistic. So, and now you were talking about coping mechanisms. You know what I mean? At that young age. So that's another thing that we need to figure out how to start developing early. Is that something that Mental Health for Heroes has got developed, Cathi? Is that something that y'all are doing with the kids? Are you giving them stuff to, and what is their reception of it? Are they taking it, or are they just, doing the typical whatever?
No, and that's the best part, because I think a lot of us, I know myself included, when I was a teenager, I was kind of like Kory. I was, not a great kid all the time. And so my parents sent me to someone and he was awful. And so I always had this idea that therapy was terrible and it was always going to be awful. And then after Logan and I lost our kids, I saw someone and she was amazing. She kind of inspired me to want to help other people as well. And that's kind of how I ended up down this road, because I wanted to create an environment where kids and families and law enforcement, and I see all sides. I mean, I'm a private practice, so I see not non-first responders as well. But I wanted to create an environment that everyone wanted to be there. I had worked in managed care when I was in grad school, and I saw those kids who, are living in shelters and they're mandated to go to, they're court ordered in therapy. And you're right, it's hard to get them to really want the buy-in and really want help. But my first responder kids and my little guys and my teenagers, I have worked them throughout some of their hardest things that they've ever transitioned. And my cops kids are the best. They come to me, and it's great just being able to help them with their child issues and then still see them. I've been seeing a few of them for a few years into adulthood and kind of helping them through those goal setting and college and all of the things that they're stressful for them, and giving them those tools that they need to be in relationships, to be effective workers, to really have those coping techniques. Because you're absolutely right, we are not taught how to have communication with other people, and we're not taught coping techniques. So those are the things that we do in the practice. So our teenagers, our little kids, we do play therapy as well. So they want to come. They're excited to come to therapy. It's not and I have snacks and drinks and all the fun things that they want, and toys and all of that. And so they are really learning how to have a safe space to be able to talk about all the things that are hard, because you can come to mom and dad for a certain amount of things, but we really give these kids their own voice, and then we help the parents, because a lot of times it's just how the parents are parenting their kids. So we give them the tools to be able to utilize to be able to effectively parent, because our parents, our boomer parents, they treated us with fear, we had fear-based parenting, and nowadays we're the ones, our generation, our Gen Xers, we're creating millennials. Well, why? Because we're not letting our kids fail, because our parents were fine with us failing. That's why we all ended up damn military and as cops. But we're not necessarily allowing our kids to fail. So it's not that we want them to, but we're going to teach them tools so that they don't fail, and also teach the parents that you can effectively parent without giving your kid overdoing it and giving them too much. So it's really all based on the entire family. And our first responders, they are the worst at it. You really look at some kids who grow up and really be bad. It's a lot of times it's cops kids, because all of those reasons. So giving them those coping techniques early and before they even realize that they needed them is super effective.
And
I like that.
a previous point she was talking about just kind of set a light bulb off in my head when she was talking about snacks and stuff in her office. She worked in managed care, and I visited her at those places. And one of the questions came up when we were starting the foundation: why don't cops just go to, Winmore or these other places? And a cop's not going to go to a place where they take their own Baker Acts. You know what I mean? They're not going to go to the hospital. They're not going to go to some managed care facility. And so one of the things that Kathy's done a great job in, specifically with her business, is if you Google her website or you go to her offices, they are like sitting in your best friend's living room. They're comfortable. They smell nice. There's nice furniture. And I think people take that angle of it for granted as well. You have to be comfortable. If you walk into a managed care place and it's a sterile facility with cinder block walls that are painted white, and Target furniture, they're not going to feel comfortable. They're going to feel like they're in a place where they shouldn't be. They're going to have that hypersensitivity and vigilance about them because it's just not a comfortable space. So that's one of the things Kathy's really mastered with her business, is creating an environment. I hate to use the word safe space because it's so liberal, but it is like every time I go to her office, I could just hang out there all day. It's like hanging out in someone's living room, and she's got nice little snacks and coffee bars and stuff. So you don't feel like you're being suppressed. You feel welcome, and you feel like someone's taking care of you. If that makes sense.
Gotcha. So we've kind of covered the pitfalls and stuff that we've seen, and what you guys are doing specifically, like what your attack plan is, so to speak, to improve things. What's been the buy-in with other agencies? How many agencies have you guys absorbed? You don't have to name specific agencies if you don't want to or anything like that, but what has the reception been with this kind of outside the box?
So we've had, I run all her numbers every month, and I believe there's 17 agencies between fire, EMS, and law enforcement in Pinellas County. Don't quote me on that number, but it's somewhere around there.
So this is just one county y'all have hit up.
Correct. Yeah. And I know at least 14 of those 17 agencies are seeing either one of Kathy's therapists or one of Dr. Benson's therapists. And the buy-in has been tremendous. Majority from the sheriff's department, and the sheriff is on our board of directors for the foundation, which is very telling in and of itself. And so anytime we get short on money or things like that, he's always willing to step up. And he has said several times that they don't want to put a cap on the number of sessions or the number of people that can be seen, because you can't say in a press conference, we're here to help, and then say, oh, but not this time because we are running out of money. So, but that also creates a little bit of urgency, which is nice having the federal grant. And we've had a lot of big donations come in from the Lightning and Tampa Bay Rays, Bayfront Medical Center. So we're getting a lot of buy-in, not only from the agencies, but the community as well, to have people like the Tampa Bay Lightning and the Rays and Duke Energy and Baystar, who the guy that runs a bunch of restaurants here in Pinellas. They've just been amazing.
Is Flagler in that county?
Flagler's a county all on its own in North Dakota.
Oh, it's on its own. Okay. When I met Ryan, I actually met Ryan initially at the International Association of Chiefs of Police, the IACP. I met him there, but I was so overwhelmed with all the meeting people, and I'm a nerd, so I like to learn. Like, I'm stopping at every booth, and I'm like, what do you guys got to offer? What do you do? Because it's a place for people. If you've never been, it's basically for all the new, latest, and greatest in law enforcement. It's a place to go see these things like Vetted Solutions and Flock, LPR, Insight LPR, all these different types of stuff. So anyway, I met Ryan in passing, not very long, but I forgot that I had met him. And then we meet at the Real-Time Crime Center National Association meeting, this tech summit in Arizona. And then it's like, he's like, yeah, we met. Remember I gave you my card? And I'm like, oh, you're the one that had the 20-pound business card. Yeah.
That's
and
right.
so that's really what triggered my memory. Cory, do you have one of his business cards? Have you seen Ryan's business card?
About?
Yeah, so for those listening, Ryan, who I thought he was going to be on this podcast. I'm going to bitch him out that he didn't get on here with us, but I'm gonna get him on a podcast, and I'm gonna gripe at him for having. He's got this business card. It's made out of metal, but I think he made out of like, you know, 20 gauge steel or something because it is heavy. I mean, it could be used as a weapon if you sharpen that thing. It's gnarly, but yeah, he's got this business card, and it stood out for sure. I'm like, geez, dude, I won't forget who this came from. But we met at the summit, the tech summit, and shit, I lost my train. Where was I going with that? Anywhere? Probably nowhere. Forget where I was. Oh, Flagler. That's where I was going. And there was a sheriff that came and spoke, and he was great. And it was the sheriff of Flagler, the elected sheriff there, and he was great. And it sounds like the same type of guy, same type of personality. That's why I was wondering if that was the same dude that you guys were referring to, but apparently not.
No,
I don't know how
Pinellas
close they
County.
are. Okay. Now, is your guys' foundation just for Pinellas County, or are you guys trying to go nationwide?
So
What's the
currently
goal?
it's just for Pinellas, and the burn rate of the money that comes in is pretty high. So we would like to expand to other counties, but it would take a tremendous undertaking and involvement within those counties and the state or the nation or however far we want to expand. But there would have to be a push for some significant funding. And additionally to that too is finding the right therapist, because when you talk about trauma and you talk about the things that police officers see on a daily basis, one of the reasons I've never seen a therapist or outside of that one time with Dr. Benson's people is that I find myself, if I tell people about my shooting or about some traumatic event or the descriptive nature of someone blowing their head off with a shotgun, you find yourself comforting them instead of getting it off your chest and dealing with what you're coping with. And so it takes a certain kind of therapist to really be able to listen to those things, process it, and then help you and provide you with the tools necessary to live a normal life. And that's what's unique about Cathy's practice, is that all her therapist girls have gone through extensive training for dealing with first responders and trauma. They have specific tools available to them to help those first responders too. And then obviously Cathi being one for the last 20 years.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah, that's an important distinction. Kory, did you go through any sort of therapy issues like that through your time?
No, I was too proud to do that. I should have. Um, but I do want to say something about Logan and Cathi. I had a pleasurable experience going out to breakfast with them, and the fact that they're like kindred spirits. If you haven't had the opportunity to go sit down with them face to face and talk with them, it is an instant connection, and they are so authentic. And I think that's the thing that's pulling this whole thing together is their authenticity, but they're from the community. They're from the military, they're from law enforcement. They understand because they have a couple decades of experience. And then when you said outside the box, that might be true, but they're within the system. They understand, they've lived the life, and that's why they'll be so successful in this endeavors, because they are an example of what can happen when you use the skills they're going to teach you. And it's really an amazing thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's important. It's important to one, when you come across fake, or when you come across it, because what are you really doing? You're developing a relationship with a stranger. It's a double-edged sword for me. One of the things with me is people either love it or they hate it with me, but I talk to people like I've known them for years. It's just how I am. I don't know why I do that. But I guess the reason I do that is because I'm trying to put somebody at ease when they talk to me. I want them to understand my type of personality right away. And it's been a valuable tool for me in the streets, dealing with suspects, dealing with whoever. And exactly what you're alluding to there, Kory, is just that authenticity, that ability to relate is important. For one, I think we need to be able to. I know me as a cop, if I needed to go see any sort of therapy, that's the first thing I need. I need there to be some sort of relatable topic, relatable life experience for me to start trusting you, because it's really about when you do start the therapy stuff. Logan, I mean, I'm sure you can attest to it with the stuff that you've had to go through. That the trust is like, if it's not there, and us as cops, we're bullshit readers. We see it right away.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
If I feel like you're being disingenuous or you're being fake or whatever, I'm out. I've already tuned out. I'll go through the motions with you, but I've tuned out. So it's super important in vetting your mental health professionals that way. I think that's really smart, and it's probably why you've got already 17. That's pretty big. I don't know how big your county is. What are the numbers? Have you looked at how many departments?
So Pinellas
Police.
County is the most densely populated county in the entire state of Florida. So
Oh shit!
it's a huge bedroom community. There are thousands of law enforcement officers. I know currently, what's our number up to? We have hero numbers for the clients because, like we said, with the anonymity and HIPAA and all that stuff, we've done a really good job of.
175.
Yeah, I think we're right around 175, and we started this foundation back in February. So 175 first responders. You know, and is that covering everybody? No, but not everybody needs it right now, and maybe not everybody knows about it right now. So, but it's been growing every month. Every month there's more intakes. There's more people finding out about it, and a lot of them are finding out about it from word of mouth through their supervisors or other people saying, "Hey, I went and saw this person. They're awesome," or "You should go see them if you're having a divorce or you're going through something." So that's kind of it's been interesting to see. Because everyone talks shit in law enforcement. That's what we do. We 56 it, behind a building and talk shit about our administration or talk shit about new policies or whatever the case may be.
It's a coping mechanism.
Right. 100%. It's them getting it off their chest with their friends. But now part of those conversations is this program. And it's resulting in people getting help. And it's, even if you can prevent one suicide, which you never know you did because you prevented it, that's enough in my mind. And I think even the sheriff of the county, Sheriff Gualtieri, has said it in board meetings that they're seeing a decline in sick leave usage. They're seeing a decline in use of force. I think it would be difficult to correlate that on like on a study, but I'm sure someone could do it. But I mean, just anecdotally, it's nice to see someone, especially at that level, the sheriff, he's going to call people on their bullshit more than anybody in law enforcement. And he 1,000% supports what we're doing, which is amazing to see.
What's the name of your sheriff?
Gualtieri, Bob Gualtieri.
Okay. There's another really popular sheriff out there.
You're talking about Grady Judd.
Grady, yes.
That's Polk County, of course.
Polk
Everyone
County.
knows Grady, yeah.
Yeah.
You shoot him
that
47 times because we ran out of bullets.
Yes. Yeah, that guy. I want to get him on here. That would be awesome.
What else is great, Eric, especially in the world we live in now where you have the right wing and left wing, Democrats versus Republicans, is that our board is comprised of people on both sides of the aisle. It's a nonpartisan thing. We have Democratic county commissioners. We have the Republican sheriff. We have people from Motorola on the board. So it's been a tremendous collaboration to be able to see people work without any of that political nonsense coming in. Has been
I think
refreshing.
I'm glad you brought this up because it is a distinction that I've had to tell close friends. They've gotten mad because my platform is designed to have conversations, to bridge the gap with the community. So one of the topics you brought up is anecdotally lowering use of force. I mean, it makes sense when you know the job. If I am mentally on top of my game, of course, use of force is going to lower because it's when my decision making gets wonky, when I hesitate, any of these factors that can cause the use of force to rise. So it's important for the community to understand if you want police use of force to lower, if you have this view that your specific department, let's not talk nationwide, I want people to focus on their own fishbowls. Focus on your fishbowls. Look at your local PD. Do you think that their use of force is high? Well, check out the outlets that they have for mental health care. That is one way to attack this without taking money away and causing political, strife. And it's really important for cops because the part I was getting to is I've given voices to very left-wing people on here because I want to have the conversation. What do we typically do as cops? And I think it's a coping mechanism that we have. It's not a healthy one. We surround ourselves with like-minded people. And we start to lose track of that there's more than just that, standard, I call it the police starter kit. You get your gas can Oakleys. You got your,
Sorry.
no offense, Kory, you get your Punisher skull on the back of your truck. You know, you got your Blue Lives Matter. You know, you got all the swag, and you got your shirt, you know, that says, you know, I'm the sheepdog. You
Yeah, I
know,
know.
that's the
You got your
typical cop
511
starter kit.
boots and
Yeah.
tactical pants.
Yeah, and our social media accounts get surrounded by like-minded people. We don't see the other side of the house. You don't have to agree. You can disagree and still be friends with these people. Now, me growing up in Flint, my Facebook and social media is flooded with people from where I'm from, and it drives cops insane because they don't have the same mindset. And I like having that around because it keeps me level-headed and remember my roots and some of the struggles and stuff that I would probably lose focus on or lose sight of because I've surrounded myself with like-minded people. So that's why I encourage cops. Have friends outside of police work. Do all these things. That's a healthy coping mechanism. And for the fact that y'all are doing that on your board is huge. It's going to keep you guys level. And I think that's how you become successful, because when you tip too far to one side, it's unbalanced. And I'm not trying to be metaphorical, but I really believe that. And that's how we take care of our mental health. So that's a smart move. I think that's a smart move. Kory, sir, were you a police officer at all?
No, no, I never was. I considered it,
Okay.
but no, I never made that leap.
Yeah, it's you know, SEAL team training's really hard, but you never made it as a cop. That's the
I don't know that I
that's
have the
the elite.
mentality. I don't know. I mean, you guys have a very unique skill set, and I'm not sure
Yeah.
that I have that.
Well, yeah, I get it. You probably would have been perfect for SWAT. You would have
I mean,
been, here's your
I
mission,
actually
go
was
do
able to
it.
go to Los Angeles County SWAT school in the SEAL teams, and that was a lot of fun.
Oh
But you
man,
guys have to
nice.
have an empathy level that is amazing, and my don't give a fuck is too big.
Well, and it's changed a lot too, because I remember when I first got on the SWAT team, we would do the dynamic entries where you flood the house like a bucket of water, and you're screaming, "Get the fuck down!" and all this other shit. And now it's a breach and hold, and they don't want you to use the F word, and you got to coddle
I
everybody when you come
definitely couldn't
out, you
make it.
know. So it's entirely changed everything. And I always thought it was interesting from a sniper perspective, because I went to sniper school here in Pinellas through our sheriff's department, and there was a couple of military guys that come out, and they'd always talk, because we were always like, oh, well, we're snipers, we're not like real snipers like the military, and they're like, yeah, you guys have to shoot a 1-inch target. There's no room for error. You know, you're not shooting a 40-inch body target. You're shooting a 1-inch eyeball target, because if you miss that bad guy and hit the hostage, you're totally fucked in the media and everything else. Whereas in the military, there's a little bit more leeway as far as, you know, acquiring a target, taking them out, and then not having to necessarily worry about the outcome in the media and stuff. Well, it's different now because everything's on the media, but I always thought that was an interesting perspective.
When I had Wyme on, that was kind of the topic for discussion. That was the whole purpose. We were talking about the distinction between military training and police training, and how there's an unrealistic expectation for the training we receive in the military to translate the same way in police world. Because you get guys like Jocko and some of these other people. I listen to Rogan's podcast religiously. I love Rogan's podcast. It's kind of how I got the idea for this. But he gets these SEAL team guys, these other military members on there, and they'll pick at law enforcement occasionally. And they're like, yeah, police need to do this training and do that training. I'm like, that's great. I understand where you're coming from, because I lived in both worlds where they only lived in one side of it. You're expecting a level of training from people who have to go home and have a home life, versus when we were active duty military. The military is your life. You signed your life away. If they tell you you don't have a weekend, you're training, that's what you did.
Yeah.
And you were always about the mission. Well, that's not what it's like for law enforcement. Law enforcement has to have a life outside of law enforcement in order to be successful and to do what they do. You can't tell me that I need to go to combatives training. That's what it is in the military. You can't tell me I got to go to combatives training, twice a week in law enforcement, because what happens in the military, we get injured, but there's 100 bodies behind me ready to go. In police work, especially at a smaller department, even at my department, we're so far behind manning. If I get hurt, it's on me because the department can't afford to pay for my training. Where the military, they provide all the training they want you to have. It's there. So there's these weird distinctions, and I get it. I understand where people are coming from when they say that, police need more training here, they need more training there. And yeah, you're not wrong, but there's a balance, and you can't come in with the mindset of a military person and have that training translate. It just doesn't work. And that was the conversation we had, and I didn't know which way Wymie was going to go with that, but he agreed with me. And when we talk about, Kory says he that's an empathy he doesn't have, because when you went and you did a mission, it was clear who your enemy is most of the time. You go in and they don't speak your language. They're definitely not going to associate with you. They're totally dressed different. Now come over here. Everybody speaks your language for the most part. Well, I'm in Texas. It's a lot of Spanish speaking. But even cultural mannerisms are all the same here versus over there, You can't give the okay symbol in some places. There's like different thumbs up means different things, I think universally this means the same thing everywhere, but for those listening, I'm flicking off the camera. But that is the type of thing that you need to be cognizant about when we're talking about training. And sorry, we went down a kind of a side rabbit hole there, but that's my podcast. We can do what I want. So,
but it does correlate though, because you could take that training and associate it with mental health training. There is no mental health training when you start as a cop. They'll come in, and the most mental health training I received was in a leadership academy for the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, where I did 4 weeks over 4 months. And they would talk about all this leadership stuff, but they would always premise it with suicide rates or how fast you die after you retire and how how trauma affects your brain. And by the end of the leadership academy, I'm like, I don't want to do this job anymore. This sounds horrible.
Yeah, it's the scared straight out of the job program.
So,
yeah.
But to your previous point, it's budgetary. It's constrained by budgets. Obviously, it always is. That's why we have this private foundation to get private money from large donors or federal grants, because agencies can't afford to give us what we need in the mental health training or the other training scenario.
Correct.
And mental health should be the number one thing.
Yeah. Yep. I like that you pointed out that the type of training we get. Now, I'm in a unicorn of a department, and I can't say where it's at, but I always give them props because I learned more about mental health than I had ever learned going through their academy. And the very first class you get is health and nutrition. And the backup, it's not like the health and nutrition you're thinking of. The premise of it leads up to mental health, because we take care of the body, we take care of the mind, physically and nutritionally and all this stuff. In that, we start talking about shift diff. We talk about your cortisol levels, how when you work a night shift, they go up, they rise. When you get home, what happens? You crash. So now you're making your officers aware of the mental cycle you're going to go through. And then we start telling them, like, this is what's going to happen. You're going to go home and you're going to be crashing from this hypervigilant state that you were in as a cop on duty. And here's some of the things you're going to face. You're going to be a couch potato because the shift's affecting you. But as soon as one of your buddies calls you on the phone and wants to tell you a story from their night that you were in the, guy that you were in the academy with or whatever, you're going to be back up here again. And your wife is going to see that. Oh, you perk up when your friends call. You got all this energy. Why is it? And that's going to cause an argument. So then we start making our officers aware of these little cycles that happen, and then those escalate because it builds and it builds and it builds. One, because our spouse didn't get that training. And two, us as officers, we were never aware of that shit. You're never aware of that unless somebody points it out. Now, this was my third academy. So we're talking, I think I had 6 to 10 years experience by that time. And I never heard that stuff before. So that tells you where even in 2010, where we were at with our mental health training. So that's important to start getting that training in the academy. because then it can set you up for your career to start healthy coping mechanisms as we go. Because had nobody told me about the shift diff and the way it affects the body, I didn't know that. I had no clue. So it's important to start getting that stuff and then learning. I would carry a kettlebell in my police car. And if I had some downtime, I'd knock out a little 10, 15-minute routine. You know, just enough to get a little glow but not make a uniform stink. And then, you know, at least I wasn't sitting on my ass. I was doing something, but I was combating that chemical imbalance that typically happens working night shift. So I like that you pointed that out. I think it's important. And is that what Mental Health for Heroes, is that something that y'all are educating on?
Absolutely. Kind of like what you were saying to your point, 18-year-old self wouldn't listen. So I definitely think it's something that needs to always be revisited. It's something that I do when I see my clients. Sometimes they'll go away for 6 months, but they know they can call me and come back to me at any time when they're having a tough call or a tough day. And sometimes I just put them on my calendar for check-ins, because it's just nice to know that they can come in, let it all out. They don't have to see me weekly all the time, but they have someone that they already have a rapport with. And to your, to kind of what you said, it's something that really needs to be revisited every life cycle that you go through, because we always forget, that we have those coping techniques. And you're right. That's great that your agency sees it. Most don't. And so that's why we're so passionate about this foundation and trying to get the word out and trying to get, be able to help as many people as we can.
It would be interesting, and this me spitballing ideas. I love our course. I love our class, that mental, the food, nutrition, health, nutrition, all that stuff for mental health. I love that course. And there's no reason to reinvent the wheel necessarily, but somebody like you guys get exposed to so many different agencies in this. It would be kind of neat if you guys put out a training that any agency could implement into their academy, because you guys are going to get kind of a unique view. We're not just talking about cops. You guys are getting ambulance, firefighters, all of that within that county. So it would be interesting. I think
they had a stress management course at the local college where they have the police academy here in Pinellas. Cathi and I actually attended it. I got in a big argument with my administration after we lost our kids about going to that class, because they were sending some other sergeants who needed the class for their resume. We actually needed it for our mental health. So we had to go to the city HR department. They made a big stink about it. So we did end up going to the class, and I have to say it was tremendous. It was one of those things. They took us on a field trip to the grocery store and told us how to all the different aspects of ingredients and food and how they affect you, and then the effects of exercise. And there was one point in the class where they actually made you take a nap and focus on your breathing and do breathing techniques and things. And it was actually a tremendously helpful class. I got in probably the best shape I'd been in a while after that class, turning into a couch potato and being depressed all the time. And then I started running races and doing marathons and stuff. And so it is a beneficial thing. I don't know why they took it away, but it definitely could be something that could be brought back for sure.
Yeah, well, because people are going to start, I mean, you guys are already growing very fast, it sounds like, but people are going to start looking at you as kind of an accreditation towards this type of thing. So a way that I could see getting out there even more is developing a course and then just offering it to any agency, charge them, do whatever. I'm not going to tell you how to run your business, but I would love to have something like that. And it's always perspective. So I'll look at our course, and I see all the things in there. I'm like, okay, cool. And then we'll look at your course, and you guys are pointing out different things that we hadn't considered. And so you're going to improve our course naturally. We're going to take, it's like all cop work. We steal everything. So we'll pick and take the tools out that will work for us. And we'll acquire it, tactical acquiring. I could see that being a cool thing to expand. I'm not trying, like I said, I'm an ideas guy. I'm not trying to make you guys do anything, but always trying to help. So, but all right, with that, Kory, I feel like I'm neglecting you now all of a sudden, sir. So with your military service, now you're helping out with the mental health for heroes and stuff. Where's the future for you in this? Where do you want to see it go?
Well, I mean, really, I'm just here for Logan and Kathy to, put a highlight on what they're doing. If there's a role for me within this organization, I'll be more than happy to get involved if there's a veteran side to it, but I'm here for them. I mean, this
Well,
is really they're the heavy lifters in this.
what I'm getting at is like, because you got the outside perspective a little bit, so I'm trying to see, like, for your law enforcement, for your local law enforcement, specifically to where you're at, because you're not a cop. So what would you like to see? I mean, you want a news conference? How would you help get the word out? What would you like to see happen with this?
Well, just in listening to what what you guys have been talking about, I just like to see the word get out in general. And I don't know how you can duplicate Logan and Kathy, but in my mind, I was just thinking, train the trainer so that more people can have access to this information, but it would have to be the right people. So I don't know what Kathy's plan is as far as training people to do what she does, but that's a tall order. And that's what
Yeah.
I'd like to see. I'd like to see this being, replicable around the country because in knowing them and just experiencing their energy, I mean, everybody needs this.
Okay. It's gonna be hard. It's gonna be
That is
hard
going to be
because you
hard.
don't want it. You don't want it to get watered down.
Well, you
So
don't want it to be
the
about you don't want it to be about money. You don't want it to be about status or what's your position title. Like I don't even have a position title with the foundation. I'm essentially a ghost. I don't get a paycheck. I don't get anything. I just do all the work behind the scenes, and then everybody else gets to boast about it on the news, which I don't give a shit about because at the end of the day, knowing what I went through, and if I can prevent somebody from leaving a career they love, like I did early, and still be able to be happy, that's what I want to see happen. That's what I want for people. So you do have to, like, all of our money that we get goes straight to services for individuals. None of it is
Yeah.
paid to. I think there's one person that's paid on the board, but she's leaving anyways. So
Okay.
all of the money that we receive goes to client care for the first responders, and that's huge because most foundations, somebody's pulling a 6-figure paycheck or something off of it.
Yeah.
So that's what's unique again about this foundation is everybody who's in it, everybody on the board, everybody behind the scenes. Friends of mine that like my buddy Rick Dimmitt, I went to high school with, owns Dimmitt Land Rover, and he's giving us his dealership to hold our foundation event at no cost.
Very nice.
So,
Nice.
it's people like that. You have to have people that really give a shit at the end of the day. You can't have somebody that's in it for a title or in it for money or anything else.
It's the hard part as a cop. So I did this podcast. My wife graciously allowed me a $2,000 budget. $20,000 later, this is where we're at. And it was all based on my thesis of cops use social media or underutilize social media. And when we do use it, we use it as propaganda. We're not winning over the people we need to win over. We're placating our fans. That's really what we do. So I wanted to reach people. I wanted to figure out a way to use. So I actually intended to use social media to fight crime. I was like, we should be making these. This is, we're talking when Facebook was fairly new and they started letting you have groups. So I was like, how cool would it be to have residential groups? You could have your beat and you could make a group and then you just communicate with your beat as a beat officer. And we can post pictures of suspects pulling on door handles and, the local lady that leaves her cat's food outside and there's all these cats, whatever reason you want to use your beat for. So that was kind of the premise. That's where I was going. And then this idea spawned. I was like, no, we need to humanize, educate, and talk about the difficult things on both sides of the house. It can't just be me talking to cops. It's got to be me talking to cops, firefighters, prosecutors, private businesses, nonprofits, talking to community leaders that are anti-police, talking to people that have been wrongly convicted. It's got to be all aspects of the criminal justice system. This is one of those. The mental health for heroes is another aspect that we need to cover. So when you talk about making money, this is the awkward part for cops, for first responders. We are morally and ethically struggle. We struggle to brag. We struggle to ask for things, to ask for help, to ask for money, any of those things. It's hard. And here I am running this podcast, and I'm slowly going into debt on something that I never intended to be a business. But then a friend luckily pulled me aside. He's like, dude, you gotta become a business, because if somebody sues you for the shit you put out, even though you're trying to help, your family's screwed. So I was like, all right. So I became an LLC because it was the simplest. I'm not a business guy. I don't know how to do the nonprofit stuff. I don't know how to do any of that. And when I tried to look, it was overwhelming.
Oh, trust me, I know.
I immediately got overwhelmed, and I was like, nope, I'm just going to do the LLC thing, set it and forget it, and let's just roll. So I did that. And then my wife's like, I know you're trying to help. I know you're trying to help people, but we have to at least break even, because this is a lot of money. And so what do you do? Oh, I first started doing like selling. I was like, let me try to sell merchandise. So I got stickers, and I made a couple hats. And that wasn't for me. I don't like doing that. So then it started relying on sponsors, kind of like what y'all are doing. And it's so hard. I think there's a lot of good organizations out there that struggle. I know me as a first responder, I struggle because I don't like asking people for help, for money, any of that stuff. It's very awkward for me. Did you guys face that same struggle, or because you have a private practice, was it a little easier for your transition? I'm trying to help other cops out there, other first responders that may get into this realm because they have a really good idea, but to get over that uncomfortable.
I would say, and Cathi can speak to this too. We kind of had a mentor young in our marriage. His name's Tom Cutler. He's a software manufacturing journalist. He's since passed away, but he kind of taught us how to start a business, how to start an LLC, how to advertise, how to do marketing, things of that nature. So Cathi and I have probably had, I don't know, 6 or 7 businesses. We even had a tactical store, retail storefront where we sold holsters and shit because we saw a need. Yeah, and you want to talk about wasting money. I think we're still selling shit from that store on eBay, but it was just, but it's an exercise at the end of the day. So I would tell, and I think it was one of the things that helped us cope with our career, to go, hey, let's try to do something. We may fail, we may suck at it, but let's try. Let's just give it a shot. We'll come up with a budget like you talked about, and that budget always ends up doubling or tripling. And then you fail.
I made a lot
you
of
go,
mistakes.
We won't do that again. Like, I'll never have a retail storefront ever again in my life. But then, like, even when I left the department, even as an exercise just to take a step forward in your life, because if you just sit around hoping for something to come along, it's not going to come along. You just have to do something that made you better today than you did yesterday, or make you know something more today than you did yesterday, whether you suck at it or not. I started a handyman business when I retired because I had nothing else to do. And I made a ton of money, but it broke my back every day. So to cops out there, you just have to try something else to saturate your life with law enforcement, to saturate your life with what the department wants or needs, or, I think it's unhealthy. It's unhealthy to do that in anything.
Well, nobody talks about either injuries or, going out on a mental disability. What else are you capable of doing? We kind of get stuck in this. Kory is the same thing, got out of being in the military, got right back in the military, because sometimes we're drawn to that. And so for a lot of the first responders, it's like they'll do a career at one agency and leave and go do an entire another career wearing a gun belt on another agency, pulling retirement. And, that's not good on our physical. And that's why we talk about what happens when you finally retire. Well, you die because you've been doing it for so long and you've been putting so much stress. So it's like, what else is there? So I do a ton of goal setting with my first responders of if you wanted to do anything, what could it be? Because at the end of the day, you're going to want that secondary career. You're going to want that, you're going to want to do something else. So to your point there, Eric, is yes, we do. Asking for money was hard for me going into being private practice, but I've known my worth and I've learned what that is. And then Logan's really good. Logan's really good at going out and getting these other companies to want to donate. And so for me, I don't do a lot of that. I don't ask for the donations, but I know my worth as a therapist and a trauma therapist, and I
Yep.
know that I'm worth the money that I'm getting.
Well, and I have a trick for asking for money, because I'm like you, I hate asking for it. So if I have like an enormously wealthy friend, which I have a few of, I'll go out to lunch with them. I'll buy them lunch, and I'll just be like, "Hey, man, I just want to like rack your brain because you're so successful. I'm starting this foundation, or we have this foundation. I know you probably have a lot of rich friends. You know, any of them that would be wanting to donate to it or support it, or and just talk about it, kind of like we're talking about it here, but not ever actually ask for anything, and then kind of make it their idea. Go, oh well, I have plenty of money, I'll donate, or yeah, I know this guy you can talk to, and then they kind of breach it, so then they get it from someone that they know that's on the same level as them. And it's worked out pretty well so far. And we have some powerful people on the board. We've got a lot of connections with powerful people, wealthy people. I think his name's Tom Pepin. He has a family foundation. He gave us $100,000 at the press conference because the sheriff was putting on the press conference and he got to speak. So, it's utilizing your networks too, and the people that you know, to kind of help out with that stuff. So
I get excited about $1,000.
I remember the first. We got $500,000 from the feds on that grant, so that was. But that and that's the other thing. If you see something that's scary, you just work on the first page and then go to the second page and do as much as you can, and then Google it.
Yep, I think that was the thing that was pointed out to me by a friend that does business stuff. Is he's like, dude, look at what you're offering and look who it's affecting. Like who's your audience? He's like, you got to know your worth. There's nobody doing what you do. He's like, so when these sponsors come in, that's how you present it. That you are a unicorn for what they're looking for because you've isolated their market. So, which they can't do. I was like, okay, that makes sense. So, well, guys, before we wrap up, I want to, if you're listening to the program right now, I got the website up. So it is mh4 heroes.com. And this is y'all's website, correct?
Yes. It's
the
right Mental Health for Heroes. Yes, it is. I have a different website. My link's on that website to my actual business, but this is
it's on this website?
Yes, right there, 360 Counseling.
Oh, 360 Counseling. So if you are just listening to this podcast, obviously go to, actually I could pop it up here on the screen. Make sure you go to our YouTube channel, 2 Cops, 1 Donut YouTube channel, Mental Health for Heroes. And I actually have the website on the screen right now, so you can check that out and visit. You can also check out 360 Counseling, and you can visit on there, maybe get some new clients. But I got that up there. And is there anything else, any parting words, Kory, sir?
Well, I just thank you for the opportunity to speak with you and definitely listen to more of what Logan and Cathi are doing. And I did want to have one thing to say about failure because that was brought up earlier. And I've just been sitting here thinking about that and how parents today don't want their kids to fail. Man, I remember being handed a Rubik's Cube as a teenager, and I would work at it, fail at it, throw it against the wall, scream, cry maybe. And I learned that failure is just a part of trying to do whatever you wanted to do. So after a month, I conquered that bitch. But I was so excited to not be afraid of failure. And that helped me to get through. I was a nuclear weapons technician when I first joined, get through SEAL training to get, bachelor's degree, master's degree. Just failure is a part of life. And the faster you try something and the faster you get into failing, the better your life's going to be, period. I don't care who you are, what you do. Failure is an exciting part of life. And if people can reframe that, and it's something I taught my kids is fail fast, fail forward. It's okay to fail. It's not okay to quit.
100%.
Makes sense.
Well, it's just like jujitsu. They say, failing is learning.
That's what I was gonna say.
Yeah, if you're losing, you're learning. So that's the same thing with failure. You learn that you suck at that, or that you need to learn something different to get better at it. You just move forward.
Yep, ego gets in the way, man. That's definitely one of the problems we have in jiu-jitsu for those that start out and quit right away. But All right. With that said, Cathi, Logan, thank you guys. Kory, appreciate you being on here. I would love to do individual podcasts with you guys if you're willing later on and just discuss your careers
Sure.
Absolutely.
in law enforcement. If you comfortable, I've had a few people come on and discuss their officer involved shootings or traumatic events like that and discuss all the things that they went through. And it really does help officers, I think, to hear it from other people. My Bruce Anderson episode, if you guys ever get a chance, listen to that one. He's a sergeant where I work, but he got involved in a shooting as an officer, and he discusses that. And I've had people reach out from Washington to Washington D.C., so across the nation, talking about that his episode really helped them on their mental health journey and stuff like that. So I always offer that up if you guys are ever willing. But yeah, Kory, Logan, guys, appreciate it. And if you hold on right before we cancel here, or I'll end the recording and then I'll say goodbye. Makes sense. But appreciate you guys being here. Thanks.